Clear this area, now. The military police sergeant's voice cracked like a whip across the Fort Meade parking lot. Samuel Jackson barely had time to turn before two MPs slammed into him from behind, driving the 70-year-old man face first into the asphalt. His camera clattered away. His Department of Defense badge, worn and faded, laminated plastic cracked at the edges, skittered across the pavement. "Subject secured," one MP shouted into his radio. Jackson's cheek was pressed against hot pavement, arms wrenched behind his back, knee grinding into his spine. He didn't resist, didn't speak, just breathed slowly through his nose, tasting blood from a split lip. Around them, late afternoon sun glinted off the distant NSA headquarters, its dark glass walls reflecting nothing. If you believe our security professionals deserve respect even when they make mistakes, type honor in the comments. Samuel Jackson had arrived at Fort Meade 3 hours earlier, driving a 15-year-old Honda Civic with a fading "Support Our Troops" bumper sticker. He'd passed through the main gate security without issue, shown his badge, received his visitor pass. Then he had spent the afternoon walking the perimeter roads, occasionally stopping, occasionally looking at his phone or making notes. To anyone watching, he looked like what he was: an old man, slightly stooped, wearing khakis and a windbreaker too heavy for the Maryland summer. Gray hair, thin on top, reading glasses on a chain around his neck, orthopedic shoes. He looked like somebody's retired accountant trying to stay active with afternoon walks. That was the point. Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb had been watching him for 40 minutes. Webb was 26, 3 years into his military police career, sharp and ambitious. He'd noticed the old man on the security cameras first, lingering near restricted zones, taking photos with what looked like an older digital camera, studying the fence lines with unusual focus. Webb had seen enough to know suspicious when he saw it. And this was suspicious. "Sir," Webb had said to his partner, Specialist Davis, "we've got a possible hostile reconnaissance. Elderly male, Sector 7, near the NSA perimeter." Davis, younger and less experienced, had been skeptical. "He looks like somebody's grandpa." "That's exactly what a good intelligence operative would look like," Webb replied. He'd taken courses on this. Foreign intelligence services used unassuming people. The elderly made perfect assets, ignored, underestimated, easy to position. When Jackson stopped near the NSA facility's outer fence and raised his camera toward the security installations, Webb made his call. "This is MP7. We have a security situation. Possible espionage activity near Building 2A. Elderly male subject photographing restricted infrastructure, requesting backup for detainment." The response was immediate. "Backup en route. Detain subject. Use appropriate force if necessary." Webb and Davis moved fast, coming up behind Jackson as he adjusted his camera settings. "Sir, step away from the fence. Put down the camera." Jackson had started to turn, moving slowly, when Webb saw something that made his blood run cold. Jackson was reaching into his jacket. "Gun!" Webb screamed, though there was no gun. Just training and adrenaline and a young man's certainty that he was stopping a threat. The tackle was textbook. Webb and Davis hit Jackson simultaneously from behind, controlled aggression, driving him down. Jackson's head bounced once off the pavement. His camera shattered. The badge from his jacket pocket flew free, landing near the front tire of a parked Humvee. "Don't move! Don't fucking move!" Davis was shouting, hands shaking as he helped pin the old man down. Jackson's voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. "I'm not resisting." He tasted copper. His ribs screamed where the knee was pressing. But he stayed still, compliant, because training from 50 years ago was still there. Never escalate, never give them a reason. More MPs arrived, 4 of them, weapons drawn. The scene transformed into a crisis. Officers taking positions, someone calling for EOD to check for explosives, someone else cordoning off the area. Webb pulled Jackson's arms behind his back, zip-tied his wrists. "Sir, you're being detained for unauthorized photography of classified installations. You have the right to remain silent." "I'm aware," Jackson said quietly. Webb hauled him to his feet, not gently. Jackson swayed, blood running from his lip down his chin, dripping onto his windbreaker. Davis retrieved the badge, held it up. "DOD credentials, Sergeant, but it looks old, like really old. Could be fake." He showed it to Webb. The photo was from decades ago, a younger man with dark hair. The lamination was yellowed, cracked. The expiration date was smudged, barely legible. "Definitely fake," Webb decided. "Probably from the Cold War era or something. Good forgery, though." He keyed his radio. "We need command notified. Possible foreign intelligence operative detained. Subject may be using forged historical DOD credentials." Jackson stood between two MPs, hands bound, face bloodied. He said nothing, just waited with a patience that came from knowing how this would end. It always ended the same way. Within 10 minutes, a Humvee screeched to a stop. A captain emerged, flanked by the base security officer. Captain Rodriguez was 38, career military police, responsible for Fort Meade's outer security. He'd been in a briefing when the call came through about a possible spy. Now he stood before an old man who looked like he'd been through hell. "Someone want to explain why this subject is bleeding?" Rodriguez demanded. Webb straightened. "Sir, subject was photographing NSA installations. He reached into his jacket during detainment. We responded with appropriate force." Rodriguez looked at Jackson. "Sir, what were you doing photographing restricted areas?" Jackson met his eyes. "Testing your perimeter security." His voice was steady despite the split lip. "Specifically, response times and surveillance coverage gaps." Webb laughed without humor. "Right. And I'm the Pope." Rodriguez held up a hand for silence. "Show me his credentials." Davis handed over the badge. Rodriguez studied it, frowned. The ID number format was older than anything he'd seen. The clearance codes were unusual. He pulled out his phone, pulled up the DOD database, entered the ID number. His phone screen refreshed, then refreshed again, then displayed a message he'd never seen before. "Clearance verification requires command authority. Contact base commander immediately." Rodriguez's expression shifted. "Captain," Webb prompted. Rodriguez looked at Jackson, then at the badge, then back at his phone. "Get the colonel. Right now." Colonel Patricia Hayes arrived 12 minutes later. She was 53, commanded the base security forces, had 30 years of military experience. She took one look at Jackson's bloodied face and her jaw tightened. Someone better have a damn good reason for this. Rodriguez handed her the badge, explained the situation quickly. Hayes studied the credentials, her face becoming progressively paler. She'd seen this clearance level exactly twice in her career, both times in classified briefings. She looked at Jackson, really looked at him. Recognition flickered. "Oh my God!" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You're Cipher." Jackson smiled slightly, painfully. "Colonel Hayes, it's been a while." Hayes spun to face her MPs and her voice could have stripped paint. "Release him, now, and somebody get me a medic." Webb fumbled with his knife, cut the zip ties. "Ma'am, I don't understand." "You don't need to understand, Sergeant. You need to shut up and listen." Hayes turned back to Jackson as a medic rushed forward to examine his injuries. "Sir, I apologize. They didn't know." "They were doing their job," Jackson said, wincing as the medic probed his ribs. "Doing it well, actually. Response time was good. Tactics were solid." Hayes pulled Rodriguez aside, but her voice carried. "That man is Samuel Cipher, Jackson. He holds Yankee White clearance. Do you know what that means?" Rodriguez shook his head numbly. It means he has the highest security clearance in the United States government. Higher than mine, higher than the base commander, higher than most generals. It's the same clearance given to people who handle the nuclear football. Webb felt his stomach drop through the floor. Davis looked like he might be sick. But why is he here? Rodriguez asked. Hayes looked back at Jackson, who was now sitting in the Humvee's shade, holding an ice pack to his face. He's been verifying security gaps for the NSA director. It's what he does, has done for 47 years. He tests our defenses by acting like a threat. When he finds weaknesses, he reports them directly to national security leadership. She paused. Samuel Jackson wrote half the security protocols we use today. He's advised 7 presidents. The NSA exists in its current form partly because of recommendations he made in the 80s. Webb's face had gone white. Ma'am, he was photographing. I thought. You thought exactly what you were supposed to think, Jackson said from behind them. He stood slowly, declining the medic's help. That's the test, Sergeant. If I can get this close looking like this, so can an actual threat. He walked toward them, moving carefully, each step deliberate. I've been testing Fort Meade security for 6 hours today. I photographed 12 classified installations. I mapped 17 surveillance blind spots. I identified 4 places where the fence could be breached. He looked at Webb directly. You were the first person to notice me. The only person. Your response time was excellent. Your partner's hesitation was appropriate given my appearance. Your use of force was aggressive, but controlled. Jackson paused. You did everything right except one thing. You assumed an old man couldn't be important. Hayes interjected. Mr. Jackson will be filing a full report. I suspect several people are going to be having very uncomfortable conversations with their superiors about why you were the only one who spotted him. The afternoon sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Jackson's camera was destroyed, but he didn't need it. Every photograph was backed up to secure servers the moment it was taken. Every observation was already documented. Sergeant Webb, Jackson said quietly, you tackled a 70-year-old man. You bloodied him, bruised his ribs. That badge you thought was fake? He took it back from Hayes. I've carried it since 1978. It looks old because it is old, because I've been doing this work since before you were born. He held the badge up, let the light catch the faded clearance codes. Don't judge threats by appearance, but also don't assume someone is harmless just because they look harmless. The most dangerous people I've ever encountered look like librarians and school teachers. Hayes dismissed the other MPs, leaving only Webb and Rodriguez. Mr. Jackson, do you require medical attention? I'll be fine. Not the first time I've been tackled. Probably won't be the last. He looked at Webb. Sergeant, I'm going to write in my report that you demonstrated excellent awareness and appropriate response to a potential threat. That's a commendation, not a criticism. Webb's voice was hoarse. Sir, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. You weren't supposed to have an idea. That's why I look like this, dress like this, drive a beat-up Honda. If I walked around in a suit with obvious credentials, I'd never find the real gaps. Jackson smiled, split lip cracking. You found me when I needed to be found. That's good security work. The system worked. He turned to leave, then paused. But next time, maybe don't lead with the tackle. I'm not getting any younger. Fort Meade security protocols were updated 3 times in the following month based on Jackson's report. 2 surveillance systems were upgraded. Perimeter patrols were doubled during shift changes when coverage gaps occurred. Webb received a commendation letter from the NSA director himself, though the details remained classified. And every new MP assigned to Fort Meade now receives a briefing that includes one critical piece of information. Threat assessment isn't about appearance, it's about behavior. The most dangerous person on base might look like your grandfather. They might be 70 years old, driving an old Honda, wearing clothes from a department store clearance rack. Samuel Cipher Jackson still tests security installations across the United States. He's been bloodied, detained, arrested, and tackled more times than he can count. Each time he writes his report, identifies the gaps, and moves on to the next facility. Because national security doesn't retire, experience doesn't fade, and the best security tester in America doesn't look like a spy. He looks like someone you'd never suspect.